In this video, you will learn how to use mental math to divide by multiples of 10, how to estimate the quotient when dividing by a multiple of 10, and also how to use long division to divide by multiples of 10. So first off, let's discuss how to use mental math to divide by multiples of 10. So when you're dividing by multiples of 10, your process is as follows. We will divide the non-zero numbers, and then step 2 is we can then determine the number of zeros. And we can do that by subtracting the number of zeros in the dividend by the number of zeros in the divisor. So for example, if we had 320 divided by 40, what we can do is we can take the non-zero numbers, so the 32 and the 4, and divide those like normal. 32 divided by 4 is 8. And then we can determine the number of zeros by looking at the zeros in the dividend, which is the 320, and the divisor, which is 40. We had 1 over here, and then 1 with the divisor. 1 minus 1 is 0, so we have 0 zeros. So your answer would just be the number 8. Let's try 3,200 divided by 40. So again, 32 divided by 4 would equal 8. And then we see there are 2 zeros here, and then 1 0 here. 2 minus 1 gives you 1 0. So your answer is going to be 80. What if we had 32,000 divided by 40? Well, again, we do 32 divided by 4. That gives you 8. And then we have 3 zeros here, 1 0 right here. 3 minus 1 gives you 2, so we have 2 zeros. So 32,000 divided by 40 would be 800. Let's try another one, see if you can get this one on your own. What if we did 320,000 divided by 40? So again, here we can do 32 divided by 4. And 32 divided by 4 again is 8. And here we have 4 zeros. Over here we have 1. 4 minus 1 gives you 3. So we put 3 zeros after the 8. And your answer is going to be 8,000. Okay, let's try another one. Here we have 3,200 divided by 400. So again, we can take 32 and divide by 4. That would give you 8. And here we have 2 zeros. Over here we have 2 zeros. 2 minus 2 is 0. So we have 0 zeros, which would just leave you with the 8. So 3,200 divided by 400 is 8. What about 320,000 divided by 400? So again, we can do 32 divided by 4. That gives you 8. And then here we have 4 zeros. Here we have 2 zeros. 4 minus 2 is 2. So we have 2 zeros, which gives you 800. So your answer would be 800. Okay, let's do one more on this slide. Here we have 320,000 divided by 4,000. So again, what we can do is we take 32, divide by the 4. That gives you 8. And here we have 4 zeros. Over here we have 3 zeros. 4 minus 3 is 1. So we're going to have 1 0. So your answer would be 80. So we did a bunch of examples, all with the same dividend and divisor component, so 32 and 4. And here we'll do a couple more, but with some different numbers. So here we have 8,000 divided by 20. All right, so how do you do this one? So again, same thing. We look at the non-zero part, so the 8 and the 2. 8 divided by 2 is 4. And then here we have 3 zeros. Over here is 1. 3 minus 1 is 2. So we have 2 zeros, which give you 400. So 8,000 divided by 20 is 400. Here is another example. We have 270,000 divided by 300. So again, we take the non-zero numbers. We take the 27 and the 3, divide those. That gives you 9. And then here we have 4 zeros. Over here is 2. 4 minus 2 is 2. So we have 2 zeros, which gives you 900. So 270,000 divided by 300 is 900. Another example, we have 35,000 divided by 70. To do this, we can take the 35 and the 7, the non-zero parts, and 35 divided by 7 is 5. And over here we have 3 zeros. Over here is 1. 3 minus 1 is 2. That gives you 2 zeros, which is 500. So your solution is 500. All right, so we've given you plenty of examples on how to divide by multiples of 10. And now we're going to use that to estimate. So we're going to try to estimate different answers. And to do this, we can round the dividend to a number that is compatible with the divisor. So what that would look like, here with example 1, we have 50,000 divided by 80. All right, so what you want to do is you want to figure out what can divide with 80. All right, so 50,000 and 80 are not compatible, right? You cannot do 50 divided by 8. All right, so the question is, what can we divide by the 8 here that would work? So what number is close to 50? What number is close to 50 that is compatible with 8? Well, the closest number to that would be 48, because we can do 48 divided by 8. So what we can do is we can round 50,000 to 48,000, because 48 and 8 are compatible. We can divide those, and 48 divided by 8 is 6. And then we count the number of zeros. Here there are 3. Over here is 1. 3 minus 1 is 2. So we have 2 zeros after the 6. That gives you 600. So your estimate would be 600. Now we're not going to actually go through the process at the moment of division with these two numbers, but if you did divide, the actual answer is 625. So notice it is pretty close to the actual answer. So that means we have a pretty good estimate because it's pretty close to the actual answer. Let's try another example and see if you can do this one on your own. Here we have 610,000 divided by 120. So right now, when you're looking at this, we would look at the non-zero parts. So here we have 61 and 12. You cannot divide 61 by 12. Those are not compatible. What I could do is try to find a number close to 61 that can divide with 12. So what can divide with 12? Well, we could round 610,000 to 600,000. Because instead of 61, we could put a 60 here. Right? So this would be approximately 600,000 divided by 120. We're rounding the first number so that it's compatible. And now we can do 60 divided by 12. So 60 divided by 12 is 5. All right, and then we need to determine the number of zeros. So in addition to the 60, we have 4 zeros after. And then with 120, we have 1 0 here. 4 minus 1 is 3. So that means we have 3 zeros after the 5, which is 5,000. So your estimate would be about 5,000. And we're not going to actually divide this at the moment, but the actual answer, if you were to do that, would be 5,083 and 1/3. So notice the actual answer is pretty close to the estimate. So that means our estimate was a good estimate because it's pretty close to the actual answer. Now to finish off the lesson, we are going to divide some more, and this is going to be dividing using the long division method. So for example, here we have 250 divided by 60, and our objective is to get an exact answer. So we're not estimating, we're not rounding, we're getting an exact answer. So the way we normally do that is we'd have to do 25 divided by 6 and see what we get, but they don't divide evenly, right? You cannot divide 25 by 6. So you can get an estimate, you can round it, but we want an exact answer. So to do that, what our process is going to be is we set it up like a long division problem. And then we kind of ignore the zeros at the moment. Just look at the 6 and the 25. So ignore the zeros, and you ask yourself, 25 divided by 6 is what? Or how many times does 6 go into 25 without going over? And that's going to be 4. So we're going to put a 4 up here, And then we carry on the process like we normally would. So now we have to look back with the zeros, look at the entire thing. So now step 2 is multiply. And you can multiply 4 times the entire number of 60. So we ignore the 0 just to get the number up here, but now that we got that number, we include the 0 for the process, where we multiply 4 times 60, and we do 4 times 6 to get 24, then put a 0 at the end, that gives you 240. And then subtract, and we are going to get 10. Alright, so 10 is your remainder. We can write that as 4 with a remainder of 10. But now at this point, by the way, we've talked about how to convert from an improper fraction to a mixed number, and that included the fact or the concept that the remainder can be written as a fraction. So instead of writing that as 4 with a remainder of 10, we could write this remainder as a fraction where we have 10 and then put that over the 60. And then from here, once we have that, the 10 over 60 we can write in lower form. All right, so we'll do this on the side. Notice that 10 and 60 both can be divided by a 10. If you do that on the top, you're going to be left with 1. And the bottom, 60 divided by 10 is 6. So the 10 over 60 we can actually write as 1 over 6. So your final answer, written in simplest form, would be 4 and 1/6. So that would be your answer when you divide. Let's take a look at 2 more examples. So next we have 530 divided by 90. All right, so try this one on your own, see if you can get the correct solution, and then you can check your work with what we have here to see if you did it correctly. So when you do this, all right, you want to set it up like this as long division, and we need to divide to get our number up on the top. To do that, we can ignore the zeros for a moment. So we'll just look at 53 and 9. And you ask yourself, what is 53 divided by 9? All right, so 53 divided by 9 would be 5 with a remainder. So 5 goes up here. And now that we've got that number on the top, we can look at the zeros now, where we do 5 times the 90. So that's step 2 is multiply, 5 times 90. 5 times 9 is 45. And put the 0 at the end, and then we can subtract. 0 minus 0 is 0. 3 minus 5 we can't do, so we borrow from the 5, that becomes 4, and the 1 we borrow goes here, and 13 minus 5 is 8. So when you subtract, 80 is your remainder. And you could just write, remainder 80, but it's going to be good practice to write as a fraction. So the remainder you can write as a fraction, where we do 80 over the 90. And then the 80 over 90 we can write in lower form. All right, so we can simplify this, and in this case, notice 80 and 90 both can be divided by a 10. So we do that, and 80 divided by 10 is 8, 90 divided by 10 is 9. So your answer written in simplest form would be 5, and then 8 over 9 is the fraction part. So the solution to 530 divided by 90 is 5 and 8/9. Let's try one more example. Here we have 420 divided by 50. So to do this, we can set it up as long division. And then to divide, to get the number on the top, we can ignore the zeros for a moment and just look at the 42 and the 5. So you have to ask yourself, what is 42 divided by 5? Or in other words, how many times does 5 go into 42 without going over? And that's going to be 8 with the remainder. So 8 can go here. And then step 2, when you multiply, you can now look at the entire number, 8 times 50. And 8 times 5 is 40. And then put a 0 at the end. That gives you 400. And then step 3 is subtract. 420 minus 400 would give you 20. So 20 is the remainder. You can write as a fraction. So we have 20 over 50. All right, so 20 over 50, which you can simplify, the 20 over 50. You can divide the numerator and denominator both by 10. So when you do that, 20 divided by 10 is 2. 50 divided by 10 is 5. So 20 over 50 is the same thing as 2/5. So your answer, written in simplest form, would be 8 and 2/5. So that is the solution to 420 divided by 50. And that concludes our lesson for today. We will see you next time.